Hello, digital photography students. Some of you take classes at other schools. Some of you have jobs. Some of you got auto-dialed and you're watching this recording right now. This is a summary of what we did in class today. So yes, welcome. I'm Mrs. Girot. And what we did was we just kind of took a survey and found out who watched the welcome video in this class. Do you know where to find the welcome video? Are you plugged in? Are you tapped in? Are you turned on? I'm a little concerned that, I don't know, 60 or so of you aren't really following the plan and doing what you're supposed to be doing. So hopefully you're watching this video now and figuring it out. On our homepage, there's a lovely little welcome video here, and I promise you that if it wasn't important, I wouldn't ask you to watch it. It's very short, but I'd really like you to watch that welcome video, please. And I want you to follow the plan. This is the plan. So our class started last week, and yours is going to look better than mine because mine has a weird glitch for some reason as a teacher. But notice on the first day of the block, you were told to watch this welcome video. And when you click on those, it says, watch this informative welcome video, please. And then you click more, and bam, there's the video. So there's a lot of different places that you can get it. And then you'll notice that the next thing we did is we got set up, directions, and you can click more. Make a folder for your photography. Download GIMP. Practice using GIMP. Submit your practice work to the Dropbox. And then there's videos here. And as I explained in that welcome video, if I post a video, you need to watch it. Students will say, yeah, what am I supposed to submit to that Dropbox there? Well, if you watch the series of videos, it will explain all of that to you. That is why these are just amazing, because they clear up all of your questions and they take you through step-by-step processes that are important for you to do to be successful in this class. Somebody even asked me, where's that photo that you're supposed to use? Well, it's right here, okay? So when you click on that photo right there, at the very bottom, you download it here, okay? And let's see here. What else? There's a rubric in the Dropbox that says how to get your points. So make sure that, if you want points on assignment, make sure that you've done everything that the rubric asks you to do. That's what they're there for. So that's what the get set up thing was all about that I keep auto-dialing you about. So make sure you're getting that done. And then you have live class folder, okay? And this is our class that we did today. And this thing that I'm doing right now is going to replace this, but there's that exit ticket quiz. So information regarding the live classes should be pretty easy to find. It'll all be in there. And perfect. So the other thing on the plan, that was week 1. Now this is, you can see on the calendar over here, this is the 23rd of January, so we're here. So you were supposed to have finished being all set up by Monday and ready to go for today's class. You'll notice that today's class was actually a part of your plan. It said class starts at 3. And then you also have Unit 2 starting, how it all works. So you want to get Unit 2 done. Unit 2 has a quiz at the end, a test at the end. And so you can right-click on your tests and open those in a new window. And you can do your tests while you actually proactively, investigatively find the answers in the online textbook. And here's a hint. Something that's really cool about these tests and the online textbook is that they go in sequential order. So question 1, what port in your camera will you be using to plug in your camera? The answer as you're reading along is going to be answered first before all these other questions. So you can actually go boop and answer that first question, right? And then go down to question 2, how much RAM is needed? And you can just read through these. And when I say read, I mean, yeah, read it, read it for show. So you guys all know how to do this, right? You take your test while you're reading and you actively find the answers. Yeah, you know what you're doing. Okay, I'm not going to bug you about that anymore. But seriously, I do want you to do your plan. So you need to get How It All Works done. That's Tuesday and Wednesday scheduled, and using your camera, that is scheduled, I believe, for Thursday and Friday. It doesn't show like that on mine because, well, yeah, it says right here to January 26th. So get those done on time. Here is also another way to get to the recordings and exit ticket for the class is right through the plan. So everything's in the plan, and everything that's on the plan is also in the content. They're linked together. That's the beauty of it all. It's amazing. So this is that How It All Works unit that you're doing. You'll notice that the test for that is right down there, and this is the using your digital camera unit with the test at the bottom. So you need to get those two things done this week and the exit ticket for this class. And here's what we did in class. So our objectives for today were 1, understanding exposure, 2, learn the camera modes, 3, get photo editing software issues solved, 4, learn your iPhone settings and apps, 5, learn Android settings and apps, and 6, learn pocket camera settings, and 7, learn DSLR, which is just another fancy digital camera acronym. Okay. So you all are using a different camera device. So what we did is we just talked about the basic camera modes that you'll see on many types of cameras. The M stands for, whoops, I didn't realize to do that. The M stands for manual, the A is for aperture priority, and the S is for shutter priority. I've never really used the P, but you'll understand more about the manual settings if you are doing the digital camera. If you have one of those big fancy clunky cameras and you're wanting to learn how to use those settings, you're going to do that in this class. It's going to be awesome. And then if you've got like a pocket camera or even phones, you might notice that you've got these types of settings on there, and so we're going to talk about what those are. And then of course auto. So that auto standard point and shoot mode for all cameras, you pick the shot and the camera does the rest. You've got a no flash auto, it's the same thing but disabled flash. Portrait mode we talked a little bit about because this is how you get those cool bokeh shots. And bokeh shots are when you have your subject, you know, like a lot of wedding photography has that. The subject in the foreground is nice and sharp and close up, and then everything in the background is blurred. That's bokeh. So this portrait mode will allow you to bring your subject in focus while leaving the background blurry. We talked about the fact that in order to get that kind of shot, you need to zoom in, well, not zoom in, but you've got to have your actual lens relatively close to your subject. You need to be up tight to it, not so close that it's blurry, obviously, but as close as you can get without it being blurry. And then the things that you want to have blurred in the background, they need to be far off in the distance, not like right behind it. So that's how you get the bokeh shot, and you guys can fool around with that. And it's actually spelled B-O-K-E-H. And let's see. Next we have landscape, okay, and that is the decreased aperture for largest possible field of depth. And so what we mean by that is that everything in the foreground, the midground, and the background is nice and sharp and in focus, okay? So we want to decrease the aperture to get the largest possible depth of field so that everything in the picture is nice and sharp. The macro is for very small subjects, but close-ups, like you've seen flowers that are enlarged, or maybe something like this. You are not going to be able to get that kind of a shot with many lenses, but if you have a macro lens, you can get really close up. Motion shots. So I like to also call these sports shots. This is when you have a very fast shutter speed, because there's a shutter that opens and closes and allows light in. And so the faster it opens and closes, the less light that's going to come in. And the longer it stays open, the more light that's going to come in. So if you're trying to take a sports shot and someone's running and you don't want it to be blurry, you've got to have that shutter speed really high in order to just capture that instantaneous moment, okay? And then shutter speed is also helpful when you're trying to take shots at nighttime and it's dark out and you need to leave that shutter open a little bit longer so that light can actually come into that camera and hit the sensor. And then I guess there could be a night setting that what that does is it slows down your shutter speed so that you can take portraits in low light. I know it sounds overwhelming, but don't worry. When you actually get out and start practicing, these things are going to start making more sense. So this M is for manual, and it allows you to control both the aperture and the shutter speeds. That aperture, remember, is going to be responsible for giving you that bokeh shot or giving you that nice depth of field that's allowing you to get everything crisp and sharp. So you can play around with the aperture settings, but it also will let you adjust your shutter speed at the same time. So shutter speed is what gives you those nice sports shots, or if you slow down the shutter speed, it allows you to get a blurry shot, like if you want to capture a waterfall and make it look like cotton candy, slow down your shutter speed. I recommend though that you do use like your aperture priority or your shutter speed priority, depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, because when you do manual, there's a lot more fidgeting around with it. But if you know that you're going to do a bokeh shot, then set for aperture priority, and then you can adjust your aperture and it will automatically adjust the shutter speed. Or if you know that you're doing a sports shot, set it to S for shutter speed priority, and you can adjust your shutter speed how you want it, and then it will automatically adjust your aperture for you. But if you start to get comfortable and you really want to get in depth, then practice your manual. It's a lot of fun. And then P, programmed auto controls both shutter and aperture, but allows you to change other settings. I never use it. So what we did in class today is we had breakout rooms for students. So we had some students that still needed to download the GIMP or some other photo editing software and practice using it. We had students, we decided, you know, everybody kind of picked where they're at. What are you using? Are you using a DSLR? Are you using a pocket camera? Are you using an iPhone or an Android? And so everyone went and broke out into their respective rooms, and you all did a scavenger hunt. We didn't get any feedback. Students were supposed to share videos, instructional videos that would help you get started understanding and using your camera settings. We didn't have any students using DSLR share anything, so I have nothing to share out with you there. And we didn't have any students who are using pocket camera share out anything, so no share outs there. For the iPhone, we did have one share out. This was a video that Jose shared. Thank you so much. We'll just kind of take a sneak peek at it.
What's up guys, I'm Nico the Camera Crunch, and this is my iPhone 6s Plus. Now I just got this phone recently and I've been quite impressed with the camera. So in this video I'm going to teach you guys, I'm going to share some tips on how you can get better photos using your iPhone, or any smartphone for that matter, with similar features to this iPhone 6s Plus. So
Okay, so you kind of get the idea there, and I'll provide that link for you. So that's all we got for iPhone, and next we had the Android, and we got a couple more videos from Jose, so let me give you a sneak peek of those.
Hey guys, I'm Saurabh, and in this video let's talk about
mobile photography.
Okay, so that was kind of a brief intro of the types of things that they will teach in that short 9-minute video tutorial. And then we had Rainey, who shared a video with us. Let's take a quick peek.
These days you don't need to have an SLR with you everywhere in order to take a photograph. In our pockets we have phones, and the phone quality has improved so much that the cameras in your phone often rival those of a point and click camera. 3 things to keep in mind though when you're using your phone as a camera. Firstly, composition is more important than ever. Understand what the rule of thirds is. Look and learn about the rules of composition. There is a grid you can turn on most cameras display on your phone. Secondly, invest in an app. The software that comes with the camera in your phone is going to be very basic. It's not going to give you a lot to work with. Spending between $2 and $5 in either the Play Store or the App Store is going to give you software that can do a lot more with your photograph. Thirdly, remember that you cannot control exposure from your phone. You can't control your shutter speed for those long waterfall shots or those beautiful night photos, and you can't control your aperture to increase or decrease your depth of field. As a rule, your camera is going to function on its ISO. That is, it's going to make the photo grainier in low light. So think about when you're using it. And secondly, that shallow and not so shallow depth of field, you have no control over. Fill your frame with your subject because the background is going to be extremely noticeable. But remember, the best camera you have is the one you have with you right now. As long as you can take a photo, you'll never miss out on that opportunity for a fantastic shot.
Okay, so I did want to just say that I know he was saying that your phone by itself isn't going to be able to do those things, but there are apps that you can actually download that'll help you to get some cool effects. So you can just look for those apps by searching up like aperture app, things like that, or shutter speed app, or night photography app. So you can get some help with that. And there was a really awesome video or a web page. It was, let me pull this up real quick. Really liked this. This was also a RainyShare, so thank you. This is fantastic. I'm sharing the link with this. But one of the things I really liked about this is that it has just basic steps that you can follow, like cleaning it, setting your quality and resolution, turning off picture frames, turning off any other effects, setting your white balance if you have that option, how to set up shots, and some other tips. So this one was a really great resource. Thank you for that. Please remember, if you still have not downloaded GIMP, go to that Get Set Up folder in the content and follow all of the video directions. It'll walk you right through it. If GIMP isn't working on your computer, just uninstall it and reinstall it. Follow all of those directions. And if GIMP still isn't working at that point, go to the next page. It says, here are free photo editing programs. We've got, there's a getpaint.net, there's a photoscape.org, and those a fortor.com. I'm not sure if that one's free. I found those ones. It's at your own risk to download those and use those. I recommend using GIMP. I've never had a problem with it. Mac users, Macs no longer want you to download something unless it's in your app store. So go into your app store and just search for photo editing apps under the photo and video category. And then we did have a share out from Thomas. He said that Open Camera looks pretty interesting. It is an open source camera app for Android phones and tablets. And you could go to that site. I'll be sharing that link with you as well, and check that out to see if that's something that you're interested in. Thanks for the share out. We also watched a video in class and saw the way that the camera is really modeled after the eye. So let's take a look at that video.
The eye is a remarkable part of the human body that responds to changing light conditions and can focus on varying light rays in an instant. A man-made device that shares many of the functionalities of the human eye is the camera. Many features of a camera are mechanical copies of what happens in the eye. In the human eye, the first thing light hits is the cornea. The cornea takes widely diverging rays of light and bends them through a small opening in the eye center called the pupil. The cornea actually performs about 70% of the necessary bending of light before it gets to the eye's lens. This is similar to a front lens of a camera's lens system. Behind the cornea is the iris, which gives the eye its color and controls the amount of light that enters the pupil. The iris is much like a diaphragm of a camera, which determines the size of the aperture. The lens of the eye functions much like the lens of a camera by bending light to a focal point. However, the physical properties of each lens are very different. The lens of an eye is a flexible structure that changes shape when adjusting its focus. With a camera, adjusting the focus is done in a different way. Here the lens is made of optical glass, which is a rigid structure with no flexibility. a camera will adjust its focus by moving the lens closer or further away from the film. This is called the focal length. The retina is the part of the eye that acts much like the film of a camera. The retina is a membrane containing photoreceptor nerve cells that line the inside back wall of the eye. These nerve cells change the light rays into electrical impulses and send them through the optic nerve to the brain where an image is perceived. With a camera, film captures the image by allowing in a certain amount of light that will affect the film on a molecular level. The eye is a much more sophisticated and complex structure than a camera, but both share the basic function of capturing light and color to produce an image. An advantage of a camera is that we can capture a moment in time and refer back to it whenever we want. However, we need our eyes to experience that visual moment in time.
So the iris of the eye, these are like little muscles right here that they're going to contract. And if they contract, they're going to enlarge the pupil, which is the hole, right? And if they elongate, then they are going to constrict that pupil and make it smaller. And that hole is what allows light in and out of our eye, right? So very similar is the aperture function that decreases and increases the size of that little opening, that pupil. So yeah, that's the function of the aperture, to allow less or more light in. And I also wanted to make sure that you had a basic understanding of exposure. One of the things, if your aperture is really open, a lot more light is going to come in. If you have it open too far, you can overexpose, meaning it's going to be white and all blown out, right? There won't be any details because the whole thing will just be bright white. And then if you have it closed too much, then not very much light can come in. And at that point, you might be underexposed. It might be too dark and you don't have any details. So here's just a quick video about exposure.
I sometimes have people who come on my training days ask what an exposure is. Now some of you may think that's a very basic question, which it is. However, if you're ever unsure of the basics, it's worth asking. There's a lot of misinformation and gossip spoken on forums and chat rooms and occasionally in magazines. The basics can sometimes be lost in the technicalities. An exposure is an amount of light needed against your camera sensor in order to record an image. Whenever you press the shutter button, you're making an exposure. What you're doing is opening a kind of two-stage tap whereby light gushes up through the lens to splash against the sensor and the image is recorded. Your camera is equipped with its own built-in light meter, and for the most part it will manage the exposure for you and do a pretty good job on average tones, on average pictures, on average days. But occasionally you, the photographer, may need to step in and take control of your exposure. Do something different. For example, I'm standing here in the shade, so Jane has set the film camera with an exposure for me in the shade. Look behind me, where the sun is shining in the bright patches, it's completely overexposed. It's burnt out. If I went and stood in the sunny bit without Jane changing the exposure, I'd be burnt out too. So there is a choice to be made. There's also another choice to be made for creative purposes. That's good. No, it looks fine. The correct exposure is whatever you want it to be. For example, I'm standing in here and it's a bit darker than it is out there. If Jane wanted to, she could expose for out there. And I'll go dark. And then back again. So the correct exposure in this case is for in here, for me. So, if I want to take a couple of shots of Lorna, happy pictures tend to be brighter pictures. So I could up the exposure just subtly a bit to try and get that happy sunshine feel into a picture. Right. That's really great. Turn your face that way just a little. Only a bit. There you go. Look. Oh, look. Come on. Excellent. Fantastic. Happy Lorna. Now, if we want to do moody Lorna, we could turn that down a bit. I'm going to go to minus a third of a stop, just to give it that little moody edge. So, for this one, that's it. Just put your chin down slightly. Turn your eyes down with your chin a little more. Excellent. That's it. That famous Lorna 1,000-yard stare. We've got this lovely moody looking kind of a shot there. So there is no correct exposure. The exposure is where you want to put it. It's up to you, the photographer, to just move it around to the place that you find pleasing.
All right, so that about covers it. All you need to do is go in there to your live classes today and take your exit ticket quiz now, and make sure that you're all set up and you're following your plan. If you have any questions, text me 801-637-9682.